Hello, students. Good morning, all of you. Today, I, Rabindra Mohan Misra from Sri Jagdamba Sanskrit College, Batho, am taking the class of Shastri first. We have seen many different questions and answers of the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad. We have also seen the summary of the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad. Today we see the narrative technique applied in the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad. Home Thoughts from Abroad puts Robert Browning in the position of one who has been away from home and is missing it dearly. The speaker, thus, is a traveler. Browning knew the feeling of missing home and presents that feeling here. While the poem reflects the author himself, it also reflects the time period in which the poem was written. Browning was one of the poets of the Romantic era, and thus his poetry reflects the sentimental ideas that characterize many of the poems of Romanticism. The very first stanza of the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad introduces a speaker who longs for home. Many readers may be able to relate with the speaker, and that gives the poem an intensified meaning for some readers. We also get the time of year when he makes his wish, April. For some reason, April has significance for our speaker. It seems to that it might have significance for England since April is there. This guy is trapped in some kind of interdimensional time portal. He is emotional in his opening of home thoughts from abroad, using the word oh to reflect his deep longing to be home. The author's use of the description of nature is typical of a poem written during the Romantic era. He describes his home country in April and is clearly envious of whoever wakes in England during the spring. It does not look like our speaker is a time traveler after all. He just got an active imagination, especially he is imagining someone, not himself, waking up in England. The imagined person is seeing some pretty neat stuff. He seems to connect with nature in that he misses it when he thinks of his home country. It is interesting that when he expresses his desire to be in England, he does not mention any particular people or person but refers to nature. Again, it is reflective of romantic poetry for the author to reveal a connection with and love for nature. The speaker continues to describe the elm tree bull and its tiny leaves. He describes the chaffinch, a type of finch, as it sings on the orchard bough. It is clear that the coming of spring has brought these feelings of longing for his home country. The person is noticing how little leaves are budding on the trunk and lower branches of the elm tree. It looks like this is the first time that this person has noticed that, because the speaker tells us that they were previously unaware. Where there are trees, there are birdies, and their trees no exception. A tiny songbird, a chaffinch, is chirping away in the branches of this orchard. The speaker dreams of the change from April to May that will take place in England while he is away. He longs to see the white-throated bulls and all the swallows. It is clear that the words are significant to the speaker, and for some reason the words in England are more significant to him than the words in his current place of residence. The use of word hark at the beginning of the word line reveals that the speaker feels that what he has to say next is very important. Thus, he calls attention to himself by asking his reader to hark or listen intently to him. He then continues to describe the spring in England as he describes the blossomed pear tree in the hills and the way it leans to the field and scattered on the clover. It is clear that all of these things of spring in England, signs of spring in England, are a part of the speaker's memories, and seeing them makes him feel at home. He goes on to describe the blossoms and dewdrops as well as the wise thrush as he sang each song twice over. The continuous use of describing nature reveals the impact nature has had on the speaker. Whenever he spent a lot of his time in England, he was able to experience a variety of birds and plants and blossomed trees. These parts of nature come to mind when he realizes that it is a spring. In his current residence, a springtime does not bring the same interactions with nature as it did when he lived in England. Thus, he longs for England and describes each piece of nature that he desperately misses. The speaker continues to describe the songbird, revealing his connection with this little bird. He says that the bird sings each song twice, just in case the listener may think that the bird could not recapture the first fine, careless rapture. The speaker continues to describe his longing for his hometown by explaining that even the parts of England that may look ugly or rough with hoary dew are still beautiful when the noontime comes around and the little buttercups become visible. With the last line of Home Thoughts from Abroad, the speaker explains that the place he is in now is nothing compared to what he experiences when he sees the springtime in England. He says, far brighter than this gaudy melon flower. It is clear now that the speaker has been looking at a flower which has bloomed in the springtime. It would seem, however, that to him the little flower pales in comparison to the blossoms he has seen in England during the spring. Perhaps a springtime in England was actually more beautiful than the springtime in the country in which the speaker was residing. However, it is also possible that the spring in England held a special kind of beauty to the speaker because it was connected with his childhood and all that he knew before leaving his home country. In either case, it is clear that the speaker loves his home country, longs for it, and feels a deep connection with the nature he has experienced in his home country of England. In short, we conclude that in this poem there is an interaction between the speaker and nature. The coming of spring has affected the speaker in causing him to long for England. The description of interaction of a person and nature is also characteristic of poetry from the Romantic era. The poet Robert Browning captures his love for his home, England. Though he is far away in a foreign place, he is often reminded of home by the smallest of